5バー空へ陸へ海へ5台のマシンが駆け巡る
In 1987, an American military man stumbled into Korea on a mission. Not a mission to find a wife, but that is the mission he happened to accomplish. From there, they had to decide, do we stay here in Korea or do we go to America? Did I insult everyone with those accents? Okay, good. There in America, they had 2 children and lived happily ever after. But what if, cue Marvel music, they never left Korea in the first place, and this 90s American kid, who's actually half Korean, grew up as a 90s Korean kid? Mainly, what toys would someone like me be playing with? The one who grew up in the 90s. So this video will be slam-packed full of nostalgia for the 90s American kids, while also being very informative about the toys that we missed out on unfairly. Not really, I guess they didn't have some of our toys too, so it's pretty fair. Okay, in fact, in this list of 11 Korean toys, only one of them is a toy that we shared in common. So let's start off with number 1. Let's see what I have written down here. Pencil cases with games. We definitely didn't have that, but that would have been incredible. Out of all the items I'll be talking about on this list, there was the least information about these. When you open up the pencil case, there is like a football field or a soccer field, so it's some traditional sport mixed with a popular character at the time. And then they have these little add-on pieces that you can build things with, like a little extra football, a little extra goal. Seems like a lot of fun, but also absolutely seems like something we could not get away with here in the States if we tried playing with it during class. Maybe you can remember something in America similar, but I had nothing like this growing up. Here in America, we had the sticky hand. It was so much fun for about 20 minutes, and then I just kind of stopped playing with him forever. But there was also the stretchy, I'm really glad you guys couldn't see my hand motion just then. It was very inappropriate.
Stop! Stop, evildoers!
Introducing super stretching superhero Stretch Armstrong.
We had Stretch Armstrong, which I actually thought was based off Hulk Hogan, and then I watched the commercial, and it was just like some skinny dude, which is funny. But in Korea, they actually had the Sticky Man, which I feel like is a little more fun. You throw it up against the wall, and you watch this thing basically climb down a wall. It's like a cheap version of Spider-Man. This one seems fun. I would have enjoyed this as a kid. Sticky hands were still pretty cool. I don't know, they're both cool. Now number 3 actually did exist in the States, but it wasn't popular at all in my community, which was South Carolina. So we usually did get things a little later. Maybe in California, New York, they were playing with these, but it's the Tamagotchi. When I was around 8 years old, the Game Boy Color came out, and you could not have convinced me to play with the Tamagotchi after the Game Boy Color. And I also think in America, we saw it as more of a feminine thing, because this game seemed like it was like this way of nurturing cute little characters, and we were like, we don't like cute things, dude. Bring me an alien eating a head of a lion. But now, as an adult, I actually think this sounds really fun, and we all experienced the Pokemon craze afterwards, so we all have the capacity to nurture cute little monsters. So for number 4, I was really lucky because I actually had a brother from the 80s, so I adapted some of the older things that I could not have gotten into as such a young kid in the 90s, but one thing was marbles. Even though we never learned how to play marbles, we just liked holding them and touching them and collecting them, kind of like everything else, like Pokemon cards. You collect them, you don't really play them. But in Korea, they had Ganji. You just put it in some paper and you light the end of it, and no, it's Ganji, not Ganja. They ended up actually building pieces for this game that you can actually use, but traditionally it was just pebbles. So as long as you had 5 pebbles, you had 4 on the ground, you had 1 in your hand, you throw the pebble in the air, and as it's in the air, you see how many you can grab with your right hand, because you have to grab them individually because you can't really scoop it, and then you catch the other one, and whoever catches the most obviously wins. This sounds fun now. I would do this now. This sounds cool. Let's do it. For number 5, the closest thing I can really think of that we had in America were the Hess trucks. Do you remember that? It was a gas station that had a super popular toy truck, even more popular than the gas station itself, because Hess is now out of business. But I had friends who would collect these toys, and I always thought they were very cool, and it was a very Christmas feel vibe. But in Korea, they had the Bakuso Kyodai Lets Go, which was the American translation, I guess, for the name, show, and they had a mini car based off of it. It was a popular show from the 90s, and it was all about The story revolved around a highly competitive and cutthroat mini-car racing universe. The cartoon inspired 90s kids to go get themselves their own mini-car. Magnum Saber, the mini-car of the protagonist, was one of the most popular. So it's probably a show almost fully made and crafted with the intent to sell merchandise, because making a show about merchandise. I don't know, just it's like Beyblade, right? Speaking of which, tops. Now, Beyblade absolutely came from this concept. There was this toy spinner thing that people played with. Honestly, the video I'm showing you right now probably isn't what they were doing, but this video has 20 million views and I just think it's hilarious. But apparently it got really competitive and people would like battle each other in the streets with these things, and it said it was cutthroat, which means maybe it was like, I'm gonna bet my brother on this one, and then you have to, I think that joke goes down a dark avenue, so let's move on. But as for Beyblades here in the States, they became super popular, and the show is really good. I watched it actually recently, and I was like, yes, good nostalgia vibes.
Lego.
So number 7 is the one we had in common. It's the Lego, of course. And Lego, ironically, I only played with 2 toys a lot really growing up, and Lego was one of them. The other one we will mention later. But Korea, America, same kind of Legos, same kind of toys, super fun. If you want to see a more in-depth behind the scenes of how Lego was created and such, the documentary, How the Toys That Made Us, has a whole video about it, and it's like so fun to watch on Netflix. So I don't know, I would check it out. I think it's super good. For number 8, a lot of people are gonna want to say like, oh, that reminds me of Transformers, but it's not really the same. Number 8 is Gundam figures, and the truth is it comes in a ton of small parts that you actually build together. So a lot of the process is more about the building of a Gundam figure rather than having it already and just transforming it. And the cool thing about this one is I actually had a Gundam figure. I went to Korea when I was 8 years old, and right when we saw it, we were like, whatever that is, we need it, let's get it. We got it, and then we went to my grandma's small apartment, and we shot like a little, you know, gun thing, and it shot her light bulb and broke it. So it was like, welcome to Korea, you rambunctious Americans. That's how it felt, you know, for me. Speaking of things we actually acquired from Korea, number 9 is the Origami Paper. So I guess you could buy this as a pack of origami papers, and then it would teach you how to make a crane, and a lot of Koreans would just make these cranes continuously. But what's really cool is when I was a young child and I went to Korea, we had a cousin who actually made an entire jar full of these little cranes. So we had these growing up, and I never really connected the two until just now. They grew up in the cranes and made a ton of them for us. That was really cool. Number 10 just pisses me off. They had something in the 90s that I just got into very recently, which is the slam dunk manga. Now, we did have comics growing up, and for some reason I never got super attached to them, even though I did read the newspaper comics. Anyways, the slam dunk manga is definitely for a slightly more mature audience, and it is really good. I mean, it's so fun to read. The art is ridiculous, and you know, I'm like on volume 8 right now, and yeah, it's so crazy that Korean kids actually grew up with this 30 years ago. A lot of the things I really appreciate about nerd culture now really weren't prevalent in South Carolina at the time. That's why I got into skating, because it was the only subculture I discovered at the time. But if I would have found out everything else, like if I was from California, who knows, because there's so many options. I was lucky enough to have the culture of Korea attached to me though, to understand that there's a world out there with a lot of different things. Last but not least, number 11, when I was a kid, I was obsessed with Transformers. Those were the 2 toys I played with, Legos and Transformers, and I think a lot of people listening to this, especially from the 90s, knew all about them. And they became popular, stayed popular for a very long time afterwards, but I just kind of grew out of them because, you know, when you play with them constantly, nonstop for years and years. But Korea did have something that was pretty much the exact same thing called the Firebird and Sun. That's not right. The Brave Fighter of Sun Firebird. What? But they were the exact same thing. They literally transformed into cars and planes and random gears, things. And that's it. If I was a 90s kid in Korea, those are the toys I would play with. Do any of them to you seem better than the ones that we had? Because I feel like we actually had a good array of options. I'm really glad with the toys we got to play with, and I'm really glad with all the things we get to play with now. I'm a full-on adult, and I still get so excited when a lot of new things come out. Speaking of which, even today, I'm about to go to a toy convention here in Texas and just nerd out, walk around, maybe buy some toys, and it's just the cool thing about being an adult with a disposable income. You can basically just be a kid who can actually afford to get your own things whenever you want them. So let me know if you like this video down below, and also let me know if you want to see a convention video. Maybe I'll film while I'm there and make a video for this channel. I don't know. Right now I'm really experimenting, and I know a lot of people watching this are like, what is going on? He's talking about Korea and anime and this and this. I'm changing it up for a little bit because, you know, for my own personal channel, I want it to be more about what I'm doing personally in my life and what's more involved, which is a lot of art. I'm drawing pretty much every single day, all day, and then, you know, the life in the nerd culture of art. And then on my second channel, if you do want to keep up with the skateboarding, that's where all that lives. All my skateboarding will be on Progress Daily, the Instagram, etc. So if you want to keep up with the skate John, it's all over there. This John, you know, I'm experimenting, so I really appreciate you being here for this video. And you know what? I'll see you next time, every Tuesday and Thursday for a new video on this channel. Take care, progress daily, and keep killing it.